the opulence of this place. But that's how, and now these were guests then of Scientology, at this very special
But
event.
do they allow people like Tom Cruise and John Travolta and the head of Bramble and Briar, do they allow these people know about these kind of guys who are down at the very bottom of?
Absolutely not. Oh no, it's incredibly controlled.
Of the scale?
Absolutely not. They would, if they did become aware of it after you've moved through many levels of Scientology, right? Which people like that have. You see, you've compromised so much of what we would consider, or the normal person would consider normal. What is right, how to treat people, human rights and certain values. You see, this has been so compromised by the time that, say, if Tom Cruise did come across it, he wouldn't be affected by it, because they would consider, you see, Scientology gives you the idea that there is two types of people. There is the what's called the upstat thetan, the people who are moving forward, right? These, and then you've got the downstat people, or the degraded beings. So
But we know this is complete scientifically. This is the bit I find hilarious about the thing being called Scientology.
Yes.
Scientifically, that's total bullshit.
Absolutely.
So do you have to be, cerebrally compromised? Do you have to be stupid to swallow this?
Well,
or do you have to be so vulnerable that you basically do the deal with the devil and you say, look, I don't really know whether this is true or not, but I feel much better than I did last week?
I think if people are offered something that sounds really good, they'll suspend critical judgment in many cases.
For instance, look at Travolta. Travolta is he runs a fantastically successful company. He flies his own highly complex aircraft. He's a man of science, a man of charm, wit, culture. One of the most superb performers. He has reinvented himself. He's not stupid.
He's absolutely not stupid. No, absolutely not.
So what's he doing in there?
That's this gives you some idea of how effective.
And why were you there for so long?
Well, I was there. If you look at the abused wife syndrome, 100%. That's why I was there. I went in, and a lot of the hooks in it had to do with Catholic guilt. Tom Cruise, by the way, grew up a Catholic, so he actually went to seminary, so he would have that kind of Catholic guilt thing, And Scientology uses this confessional system, which is to get a person to confess. I mean, the most inner secretive thoughts that I've ever had, and bring them out into the, in the open. Then these are all listed then in.
What was the worst thing you ever had to tell them?
I used to get terribly embarrassed about masturbation, and because sex is very controlled in there, you're not allowed sex, unless you're married. And then marriage is quite different to what you normally consider marriage in the real world. But I used to have I used to find it very, very frightening to talk about that, you see. And again, you can imagine sort of growing up in sort of 70s and 80s Ireland, that would be the case as a Catholic,
So they'd get you to talk about masturbation.
Yeah, exactly. And
in huge detail.
In incredible detail. Exactly what I was thinking of, what I was doing. And then I'd be afraid, and I was quite a young fellow when I was there too. And it's not just past masturbation, but I'd be thinking, oh my gosh, just recently. And then I try and control, I can't masturbate because I know I'm going to be, audited, and I'm going to have to confess this.
So it wasn't. So in other words, the fear and the level of control was really, I can't face the embarrassment and the humiliation of having to be placed in a position where I'm saying this in front of these people.
That's one of the things, yes.
Yeah,
there's always the ever-present RPF, and if you do, So
in other words, if you turned around and said, look, do you know what? Masturbation is actually probably healthy and you guys are nuts. You'd be down to the RPF, dressed in your black pyjamas and shoveling shit immediately.
Yeah, very much so. If I was in a position to do that...
Okay, remind me not to join the Scientology guys.
Don't. It's not good for you, Gerry. There's a lot better things you can do with your life. But no,
What was the turning point for you, John?
A number of things. First of all, I was on a project where I was buying off a person who was critical of Scientology, and I had to pay that. I had to find 600,000 sterling and give the money to that person to make that person go away.
That'd buy it off, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Oh, exactly. Bought her off. I mean, yeah. In doing that, I was away from the Scientology, the C organization center in England for quite a long time. So I was living out in Dorset, working on this case. And then while I was there, I was exposed to some information on the internet. I'd never experienced the internet.
So you began to experience the real world.
That was the beginning of it, and it still took me. And something cracked there, and I really began to see the insides of what was really going on, what was being hidden from me. And then it took another 5 years before I was up in Birmingham, where I was trying to I was actually working on infiltrating the local government to get myself elected there into local government to, for some other projects that we were doing Scientology-wise. But while I was there, again, I was seeing real people again. I was really facing up to the real world, and I had an awful lot of information at my disposal because I had to know what I was talking about. So I was reading a lot of sociology and psychology.
Did you get the 600,000 for the guy?
Oh, absolutely. That person.
Did it buy him off?
It bought him off, and the person went away.
I bet it did.
And we were very happy with that.
Now, after this interview today, and we're going to call a halt to it now, and I can really highly recommend, by the way, the complex. It'll give you a great understanding, because I think this comes up so often, whether it's Cruz jumping up on the sofa on Oprah or whatever it is, or John Travolta and the tragic death of his young son. These conversations come up so often. I think that a lot of people really don't understand what is at the heart of the debate. Now, what's going to happen after this interview? Will the Irish Church of Scientology be chasing you down, or even for that matter?
They already shot themselves in the foot in that. No, I'm just going to go back to university. I'm going to be studying away. I don't think I've got any problem. In Ireland, Ireland's a very tight media establishment, and Scientology's biggest fear is exposure. That's the biggest fear they've got. Before the book came out, the Scientologist representative in Ireland said, "Oh, it's all lies, but we're not going to sue." So he said that normally Scientology would sue, but he said that, so now they can't do anything. But
I presume there's a selection of them huddled round a radio at this very moment in time.
Of course there is.
What would you say to them right now?
I'd say, look, lads, it's the people in Scientology are not evil in general. Most of the average guys, like in Dublin or whatever else, they're in there because of some vulnerability, and life is just getting out of that horrible 24 hours a day controlling, where you can't actually rest for a moment. You can get rid of that. You don't need to have that. You don't need to be in fear, because mostly they're controlling them by fear. And you can get out of it, and you can live a real life. You don't have to spend all your money on Scientology. You don't have to spend all your free time. You don't need to neglect your children. You can actually live a decent, enjoyable, pleasurable life. And that the fact that you are being lied to. If you're in Scientology, you're being lied to, and you're being taken for a ride that you won't even be able to get any comprehension until you're out of Scientology, just how much of a ride you're being taken for. Okay. It's just get out of it now.
And if you want any assistance on getting out of it now, The Complex, an Insider Exposes the Covert World of the Church of Scientology, written in conjunction with Nicola Tallant, who's a colleague of ours here and a fine writer too. Thank you very much indeed, Sean. Okay. Good morning to you.
All right, Gerry. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Now, I'll. By the way, it's published by Merlin. And if you want to know a little bit more about Scientology, the internet's absolutely chock-a-block with pro and con. Now, I leave you with these thoughts. Obviously, people like John Travolta and Tom Cruise are incredibly successful. They seem to be very happy. All right, with Tom Cruise maybe more so than John Travolta, there are certain eccentricities that kind of make you wonder. But I mean, we're all eccentric to a degree, aren't we? Somebody said to me recently, but what about when his wife was having the baby and she was told that she couldn't make any noise during childbirth, and he had all these signs put up? Well, I mean, if you look into the Catholic Church, there were a lot of weird things when I was growing up. Women, being considered, unclean after the birth of a child, having to come to be churched, to be sort of brought back into the fold. I mean, there was a lot of weird things within conventional Christian practice as well. So there's pros and cons, I suppose. There are people who have benefited from Scientology. Without doubt, there are people who have really redesigned their lives and have moved forward. It's at what price? That's the question, really, that has to be answered. At what price? Finally, in relation to John Travolta and his wife Kelly and the death of their son, Jet, I am really completely 100% mindful of how dangerous it is to link a human tragedy such as that to a story such as the story that myself and John Duignan were attempting to deliver to you this morning. I, under no circumstances, would I underestimate the pain of John and Kelly. I don't know John Travolta, but I know one or two people who do. They have huge admiration for the guy. He's a wonderful husband, a great father, and a very smart man. What did he have to give up for Scientology? Well, only he can answer that. Or maybe he gave up nothing. But there certainly are others who gave up a lot, who gave up everything.